When you think Zelda bosses, what comes to mind? The horrific undead beast Stalord, the ancient spirit of Death Mount and Volvagia, the demon lord Girahim, Zan, Phantom Ganon, Twinrova, not you, and other exhilarating battles between hero and evil. But these types of bosses kind of disappeared with the release of Breath of the Wild. Rather, the open-air adventure of Breath of the Wild took a more, well, open approach. The game features two types of bosses, the Divine Beast bosses and the Overworld bosses. Now, I consider the Divine Beast bosses to be something completely separate and more story focused, but the Overworld bosses were interesting. Instead of venturing through dark caverns or diving the depths of Lake Hylia, these bosses could be found literally anywhere. But going into the sequel to this game, what will happen to these bosses? I highly doubt we will be sticking with just the same bosses as before, as that would be boring. No offense, buddy. So it's safe to assume that we will see the introduction of some new bosses to keep things fresh, and I've put together a little list of my own with 5 ideas for new bosses in the sequel. Dream ideas if you like. Keep in mind these are just my ideas though, so no throwing your snack or drink off the table if you don't like them, okay? Be sure to go grab yourself a Fergalicious snack or drink and send them in on social media to get featured right here, and let's get into my 5 dream boss battle ideas for the Breath of the Wild sequel. One of the most unsettling enemies in Breath of the Wild is the Guardian, a corrupt Sheikah production turned into a malicious killing machine due to the malice of Calamity Ganon. These big hunks of Sheikah mess were made a huge focal point to players leading up to Breath of the Wild, and rightfully so, as they played a huge role in the story of the game, being largely responsible for the heartbreaking destruction of the Calamity. Guardians have no limit. They will tear through anything like a hot knife through butter, and going into the sequel, I think it would be really cool if we got to see new versions of these monstrous machines. We know during development, the Zelda team looked at various designs for the Guardians, and whilst it would be cool, no, I'm not talking about old fuzzball over here. Rather, I'd like to see some sort of Mega Guardian. At first, I didn't think this would be possible, as where would this new Sheikah tech just appear from? But as we've seen with the upcoming Age of Calamity prequel, there is in fact some technology we didn't see in Breath of the Wild, but now know exists. I was thinking that maybe during our exploration with Princess Zelda, perhaps within the underground, that we come across some long forgotten prototypes, but as we inspect and study it, the Guardian activates, and before we know it, we are face to face with a Mega Guardian. 3 times the size of the regular machine. That would be awesome. This idea might be a little more fitting for the likes of a dungeon and being a one-time boss. But for example, if the Akala Citadel was turned into a dungeon, we could totally find this Mega Guardian deep within there, as the Citadel was a fortress of defense. It would make sense for them to have this sort of weapon in their arsenal. You thought the Guardians were a challenge? Just wait until you meet one of these guys. One thing I felt Breath of the Wild missed out on was variety in enemies. Instead of focusing on having a large cast of enemies, the game focused more on difficulty variations of a type of enemy, which I can totally understand, but the variety was missed. In past titles such as my all-time favourite Twilight Princess, we saw a wide variety of enemies, 82 individual enemies in fact. From the measly Bulblins and Tektites to the Phantoms of the Night such as Pose, the winged Eralfos and the undead Staltroops. Twilight Princess has my heart when it comes to the enemy variety, and one of my absolute favourites from that game, which I believe would make a good fit for the sequel, is the Dark Nut. These heavily armoured knights have appeared a few times across the series, notably in The Minish Cap, Wind Waker, and Twilight Princess. Essentially, a Dark Knight is a knight plated in a thick, impregnable armour and wields a large blade, double the height of even the Master Sword. These guys are tough and resilient, and if the intense battle from Twilight Princess is anything to go by, then a new version of them in the sequel would be amazing. I'm thinking that they could maybe appear within some of the unexplored areas such as the wreckage points of Hyrule Castle, such as the Great Hall, which thanks to creating a champion, we know exists, but is blocked off by the rubble. The previously mentioned Akala Citadel would work well too, along with any new areas or dungeons we discover. Honestly, a one-on-one fight against a Dark Nut, in my opinion, is the best blade-on-blade battle in the entire series. They are an enemy I would love to see return in the form of a boss, overworld or dungeon exclusive. Now, if you caught the recent Halloween special of mine, you will know that I briefly brought up the idea of bringing back Dark Link to the sequel. I only talked about this idea in the form of an honourable mention, but just couldn't resist bringing it back up here. Dark Link is essentially Link's greatest match. Not necessarily his most difficult foe, but definitely his best match. This Shadow Spectre is a carbon copy of Link, literally a shadow mimicking his movement. That is what makes the challenge of Dark Link so interesting. How does one beat themselves? What? Dark Link would obviously be returning as a one-time boss. It just wouldn't feel right for this boss to respawn or anything, meaning a dungeon would likely be the most fitting scenario. A while back in a video I did with Zeltik, the idea of Link coming across some sort of dark, possessed mirror somewhere that has been untouched and unvisited for years came up, with the idea being that in the sequel, Link would find this mysterious mirror, but as he sees his reflection, it begins to fade to black, and suddenly, his reflection jumps out at him, smashing the mirror, beginning the battle of the returning Dark Link and present Breath of the Wild Link. This could just be me being obsessed with the whole Dark Link concept or potential Dark Link designs, but it's a boss fight which in my opinion is very welcome. Hitting a little closer to home in Breath of the Wild, Malice. Malice is something we saw a lot of in the game, as it was essentially the fuel to Calamity Ganon's rampage 100 years ago. It's a deep purple and black mess that infects parts of the land. In concentration, forming eyes, spawns for floating skulls possessed by Malice, and in some cases, completely engulfing structures. The stuff is deadly, just touching it alone damages the hero. It's basically the toxic waste of Zelda, and something that I thought would be really cool to see is some sort of clustered build-up of this stuff come to life. A Malice monster. If you know your Pokemon, then think Muck, but the size of a Hinox. I know. And made purely of Malice. Yeah, that's my idea. I think that similar to the Mega Guardian, it would also help to build on and expand the Breath of the Wild enemy roster, along with creating a potentially challenging fight. It's a large gloopy monster that you can't even touch or it will deal damage. Just imagine it spitting drops of malice at you, almost like acidic rain. This thing would be bloody terrifying, and quite the challenge. Alright, I know what you're thinking. Well, no, I actually don't, but I do have two guesses. Right now, you're either saying to yourself, oh yeah, Zonai boss, or oh no, unsubbing, whilst writing an angry comment, disliking on all 10 of your alt accounts, and asking to speak to my manager. Alright. Pro-Nai or no-Nai, I think the idea of this long-forgotten tribe is interesting. I don't personally know if they have a place in the sequel, but going off the fact that a lot of people love them, I thought the idea of seeing some sort of Zonai master would be really cool. I'd imagine this mysterious tribesperson to be similar to Monk Maz Koshia from the Champions Ballad DLC. I really enjoyed the battle against him, not just in terms of the combat, but the story behind it. Maz Koshia isn't an actual foe, rather a test with divine power to trial the hero. It's believed that the Zonai migrated below the ground many ages ago, and going off the emphasis on the underground exploration in the sequel, I think it would be so awesome to discover some sort of underworld settlement of sorts, similar to the Yiga clan base, but actually deep underground. Obviously, I have nothing to go off in terms of ideas for the actual fight, but just imagine something similar to Monk Maz Koshia. Monk Maz Koshia, but Zonai. The Zonai are a myth. Thanks a ton for watching. I really hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, be sure to drop a like to support the channel and subscribe for more Zelda content. What do you think of my ideas? Like them or totally disagree? Let me know some of your ideas as well down below in the comments. I look forward to reading them. Huge thanks as always to all of my wonderful supporters on both YouTube and Patreon. I love you all so much, and I cannot thank you enough for the support you give me. If you'd like to help support the channel and get your name featured at the end of all of my videos, a shout out upon joining, and more, then consider supporting on either YouTube or Patreon. Again, thanks for watching, and until the next time, I've been Hyrule Gamer.